Hello, everyone, and thank you again for joining us here at Pax at Lux Mundi, where we bring to you wonderful guests that will be participating this year at the 7th World Conference on Peace and Light on June 18th, 19th, and 20th. And today, I have a very, very special guest. Her name is Sue Stevenson. And Sue Stevenson she is the executive or strategic director. She's the Director of Strategic Partnership and International Development at Barefoot College Institute. She is working to pretty much create women led innovations in education, technology, and healthcare to create sustainable social and economical uplifts in communities that are impoverished. Hello, Sue. How are you today?
Hi, Teresita. Lovely to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me.
Yes, I am so happy that you can make it. And, we are at 9 hours difference. I'm here in California and can you tell us where you are right now?
I'm actually speaking to you from the island of Malta in Europe.
Amazing. It must be so beautiful over there.
Well, it is, but then it's beautiful in most parts of the world.
It's true. That's very true. That's very true. Well, I'm so happy that you are here, Sue, because we really want to get this moment to be able to talk to you about what it is that you do and what it is that Barefoot College does around the world. You guys are doing magnificent work in all areas of the world, especially India and Latin America. And I would love for our listeners to hear a little bit about all those projects that you guys are creating with so many wonderful people. And one of the first questions I want to ask you is what inspired you to work with Barefoot College International and the focus with women led innovations?
Okay, so the reason that I joined Barefoot College was very synergistic based on my previous job. I took a career break to have my children and to bring them up. And prior to taking my career break, I'd set up something in the UK called Business in the Environment. This was back at the beginning of the 90s. And so this was the double bottom line. And the objective of the organization was to make sure that companies in particular were sustainable, environmentally sustainable, and made a positive difference to their bottom line. Well, the rest is history. So go forward 20, 25 years. My last child goes off to university, and I meet one of the key founders of Barefoot College. And all of a sudden, we've gone from the double bottom line to the triple bottom line. And I love the fact that Barefoot College made real difference to real people. Now, perhaps I should tell you a little bit about the history and the background. So the barefoot approach, as we call it, has been evolving for the last, next year it will be 50 years, so for nearly 50 years. And what we do is we take what was one of our guiding principles from Gandhi, which was leave no man behind. And when I'm talking about man, I'm talking about everybody, be it man, woman, and child. And what we do, we work with some of the poorest and most remote communities on the planet. Those where people live on less than $2, $1.50 a day.
Wow.
And we take these people because we don't want to leave anybody behind. And when you say, who are they? They get referred to as grassroots or last mile communities. And what we try to do with them is to help them overcome barriers to education and technology that provides them with the skill, the knowledge, and the technology so they can raise their own social and economic picture within the world. I mean, I think that's the easiest way of doing it. So we're providing them with the fishing rod. We're not providing them with the fish.
Okay.
And we've learned over the years that if you want to change anything in the world, you train a woman. Now, At the
Good.
same time, I'm going to come back to this, but I think at the same time, it's very interesting when you think about it and you think about the global demographics. Now,
Hmm.
I know it doesn't split exactly 50-50 women and men, but you
Right.
see where I'm coming from.
Right.
And very interestingly, in September 2015, McKinsey came out with a really interesting report on gender parity. I don't know whether you have ever read it or
I
not.
have. Yeah.
But basically, what it says is that if we could make women economically viable, then we'd be able to increase the global GDP by 26.7% or something, or 27%.
Hmm.
It was something like that, which would
Wow.
mean that is more than the combined GDP of the USA and China put together. So think what a
Hmm.
difference you could make. Now, what is the least used resource in the developing world? It's women. So if we can work with women, and we can make them economically viable, we can provide them with education and skills, then we're providing economic uplift because women share, they go back and teach others. We're
Hmm.
providing economic and social uplift to everybody. So if I take an example of our flagship program, which is a
Hmm.
holistic, women-led access to clean energy solar power program, we take these women to the Barefoot College and we train them to be solar engineers. At the same
Wow.
time, we work with them on their aspirations and their confidence and soft skills. So, what sort of skills, what vocational skills do you need if you're going to become an entrepreneur, for instance? So, we
Hmm.
work with them on financial inclusion, digital inclusion, women's health, civil society, human rights, environmental sustainability, and livelihoods that can be developed in the parts of the world where we come from. Now, as you mentioned at the start, we work all around the globe. We work in over 90 countries, which cover Latin America, Africa, India, Southeast Asia, and the Pacific Islands. So, we're talking about a lot of people that we make a difference to. Now, these women are mostly illiterate and semi literate, but that doesn't mean they're unintelligent. It just means that they haven't had the same opportunities that you and I have had. And
Yeah.
these women are, they soak up knowledge like a sponge. They're thirsty for it because it's something that they haven't had easy access to. And so
Right.
this is where we come from. So these women, they learn to build, install, and maintain solar home lighting systems, which they return to their communities. And this is what they do. They provide this platform of power and light. And if you start to think about the benefits that come from that, we're not just talking about light from when the sun goes down to when the sun comes up. You and I flip a switch. These people don't
Right.
have that opportunity, but with the
Right.
solar power, they do. And with this goes many other benefits too. So, women in the developing world spend an awful lot of time, for instance, collecting water. But if you have a
Hmm.
power source, you have the possibility of solar pumps, easier
Hmm.
access to water,
Right.
also access to clean water, and that with everything that goes along with that as far as health is concerned as
Hmm.
well. You're also doing away with the black carbon from the kerosene that they
That's
burn.
true.
And
Hmm.
so you get, not only are you doing the planet a favor, but you're
Yeah.
doing the women and children a favor because the upper respiratory tract lung infections that they suffer from breathing that in
That's
is a
right.
major contributor to death. And
That's right.
especially with COVID,
Hmm.
um,
I had never thought about that. You're right. It's so true. Hmm.
then in addition, you think of, there are other things such as, let's take the children. So now children, instead of trying to do their homework with the kerosene or with a torch, holding it over the
Right.
homework. They can actually easily do their homework. So you get better education outcomes because
Mm-hmm.
children can easily work at night. It obviously extends the day for the adults as well.
Right.
So when they have small cottage industries, let's just take an example of something simple like weaving, for instance. They can
Mm-hmm.
continue to do that into the evening. You
Right.
obviously have the safety elements as well, whether that's from when they go outside with a solar lantern, whether it's from wild animals, or whether it's from human beings. These are all
Mm-hmm.
things that you need to take into account that you and I don't particularly think of because we have access to this
Right.
light.
Yeah.
Other key things. So many of these women, so our solar engineers are affectionately known as the solar mamas, the grandmas. But
Okay.
you'll be surprised, or maybe not, to learn that many of these are as young as 30, 32. But that's because they
Yeah.
get married off when they're 12.
That's
So,
right.
by providing empowerment of women and girls and showing why it's important for girls to stay in school, you're actually helping to change the mindsets within these communities to help take the female section of the community to become fully involved and
Mm-hmm.
committed to the community. Not that they weren't before, but there's one thing looking after the home, spending hours and hours collecting water, collecting firewood. But if you can give them those extra hours and you can give them the skills to become micro entrepreneurs, they can start small businesses. And if I
Mm-hmm.
take an example of something like even beekeeping. So beekeeping, in 2015 in Zanzibar, we decided to pilot that as a potential livelihood.
Wow.
So we, after the first 6 months with the first harvest, we had 3 types of honey. We had mango, we had
Oh,
mangrove, and we had clove. We're up to
that's
about a dozen
amazing.
now. But
Yeah.
the key thing about this is it's something that was comparatively easy for the women to learn to do. They sell their honey to the hotels and the tourists on the
Mm-hmm.
island. And it enables them to increase their income from $1.50 to $3 to $5 to $7.50 a day. And
That's amazing.
so this makes an amazing difference. And so you understand why. After the
Yeah.
first course we ran and the success, we literally had women queuing up around the block wanting to train as beekeepers. But
Yeah.
this is the sort of thing that we do at Barefoot College International. And this is the sort of thing that makes a real difference to real people.
And this is so empowering, Sue. You're making me think of the fact that if you watch the news, you never hear about all of this. You don't hear about the needs that are out in the world, at least not here in the United States. You don't get that type of news, that allows you to see the real picture.
Mm-hmm.
And what you guys are doing is just fantastic to be able to reach out to so many women and then they go back to their communities and be able to teach the other women and then
Yeah.
start creating these projects is just so enriching. It's enlightening for them and their communities, but also I think for the whole world as a
No.
whole. So this is powerful. And why are social economic sustainable communities important, and how can that inspire a world of peace and light?
Okay. Well, I don't think anyone would argue with us that if we have communities where we have the economy and society that's inclusive of everyone, then it's much more likely to be a peaceful society. But I think our big challenge is how we get there. And the key to that in your question is the sustainability piece. Now, there are many parts of the world where there are some brilliant interventions, and these interventions work well in the short term. However, what we have found is unless you can actually address the root problems, and they're often interlocking. I gave you the example before. So, if you have lack of access to power,
Mhm.
if you have lack of access to vocational skills, if you have lack of access to education, then these are all interlocking problems. And if you address one of those and you don't address the others, you're not going to have long-term sustainability. So what we have is what is these days very much referred to as a systems approach to the work that we do. And what we try to do, we try to address all of these interlinking challenges that the communities face so that
Okay.
they actually own them themselves and the change takes place from within. That's
Wow.
how you're going to get sustainable change, taking
Yes,
place from within.
that's great. And then it starts at, does it start at on a individual level and then it goes to a familial level and then a community level? That
That's
change?
the that's the way that the model works.
Okay.
And the reason that it's women that do it, I mean, we we'd love to train everybody, and initially we did try to do so, but we discovered men just wanted a certificate to run off to the cities to monitorize.
Okay.
Young women were equally selfish, but the older women who had the families and were brought into their communities, those are the ones that we train, and those are the ones that go back. And they share, as you quite rightly said earlier, they share their knowledge with the people in their communities and in their adjacent communities. And
That's
it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, they're quite happy to share it with you.
that's
And
wonderful.
this is how the model works.
It makes me think of the village mentality, where a person cares for everyone, and everyone within that community cares for everyone. And I think that's one key piece that we in the Western society need to readopt because I think that we have forgotten that. Many of us have, at least. And so I think it's important to look at these communities and maybe take those models and start implementing them in little pockets around the world, and maybe that will create even more change. But it's amazing everything that you're sharing, Sue, and I appreciate it. The last question I wanted to ask you today is, with everything that's been going on in the world with COVID and all of this chaos due to the virus, do
Mhm.
you think that there is, you know, there's do you think that we can still uphold some hope for society and the world as a whole?
I actually do. I mean, I'm a naturally hopeful person, but let's take a look around and see what's happened. Now, over the last 12 months, I think there's no doubt that the global pandemic has emphasized just how interdependent we all are on everybody, on,
Mhm.
on each other. And if we're going to address the challenges that we all face, then we're going to have to do it together, whether it's from a governmental point of view, a corporate point of view, an NGO point of view, or an individual point of view. Now, interestingly, and I'm sure you're very au fait with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Now,
Yes.
to me, there's one goal that is the most important goal if we're going to reach the targets that have been set, and that's number 17, partnership. And I
Yes.
can't stress that enough. Now, I mean, if we just have a look around and we see what has the pandemic done from a positive point of view, it's certainly driven innovation, especially
Right.
in technology, at a completely unprecedented rate. And I think that for the time being is certainly going to continue. And I
Hmm.
think we're going to see more and more innovation and more bold ideas, which is absolutely wonderful.
Yes.
I mean, we at Barefoot, We've used a lot of technology, IVR, WhatsApp, looking at different versions of AI to see how we can be better and more effective in the distribution of the knowledge and education that we do. And I think you're just seeing this across the board.
Yes.
As far as governments are concerned, we're seeing government much more engaged and active in many places than they've been before.
True.
I'll highlight a couple of the areas. Public health is one of them, and looking at a greener recovery is another.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there
Yeah.
are others, but I'm just taking some examples here.
Yeah.
If we look at corporations, we see that now the triple bottom line is people, planet, profit. And we're seeing more and more that this is becoming one of the keystones of corporate strategy, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's a big corporation or a smaller one. And I think we're finding ourselves more and more, and this is, I think, is something wonderful, where, and I'm hoping that governments will continue to do this, is
Yeah.
where we have a climate for business, but especially small businesses, because small businesses have a major role to play. What do I mean by that? Well, I'm now going down to the individual piece, because that's where they draw on people's ability to develop ethical, sustainable businesses. And I'll
Mm-hmm.
just give you one little example here. There's an organization in the United Kingdom called Elvis and Cress. And what
Okay.
they do, they repurpose fire hoses and leather offcuts into bags and belts and purses. It's a wonderful business. And it's just one example.
Yeah,
And I think,
I actually read an article about them not that long ago. I think it was last week, and I posted it on Facebook
oh,
of how they,
fantastic.
yeah, so I'm familiar with it.
Okay, so, but I mean, there are many, but I just, they're a particular favorite of mine. So I
Yes.
just wanted to bring that out and
And
emphasize
the
it.
and the bags are actually pretty nice
Oh,
too.
they're
It's
fantastic. They're
yes.
fantastic.
So,
If you come
yeah.
to the UK, I would love to take you down to meet them.
Oh, yes, I
Uh,
would love to.
we'll we'll obviously
One
have to
day.
try and arrange that one day.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
so what I'm trying to say is this is where individuals and NGOs meet in the small businesses, because what we're trying to do with the grassroots last mile communities is put them in a position where they have the education and skills to create their own small businesses, so they're coming up to meet everybody else. So
Uh,
this is why I'm hopeful that we will one day get towards a position where we have really resilient and sustainable socio-economic communities. And that has to be a good thing for everybody on the planet.
yes, I agree. I agree, Sue. Well, Sue, it's been wonderful talking to you. I am so happy that we had this chance to get to hear a little bit more about what Barefoot College does and all the wonderful projects that you guys are taking up with these communities. I can't wait to see the presentation that you have for us on June 18th, 19th, or 20th of this year during our seventh World Conference on Peace and Light. I can't wait.
Well, thank you. And I very much look forward to seeing you there.
Yes, thank you, Sue. We'll see you soon. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye bye.
Bye.